It's a real honor and a privilege for me to introduce our Secretary of Labor. Secretary Hilda Solis, the Secretary of Labor, is a living example of how unions can assist working families and help open the door to an amazing career. Her father worked at a battery recycling plant in the San Gabriel Valley, where he helped organize immigrant co-workers in the Teamsters, improve their health care. I could go on, as she does often, her inspirational story of her parents and her entire career. So she's advanced far from that early life to serve as a member of President Obama's cabinet, but never forgets for a minute where she comes from. Prior to her confirmation as Secretary of Labor, she served for 8 years in the House of Representatives. Her legislative priorities included expanding access to affordable health care, improving the jobs of working families. During her last term in Congress, she served on the House Subcommittee on Telecom and the Internet, where she worked with CWA quite actively in support of a national broadband policy that would guarantee every American affordable access to the promises of the information age. And this will not be a surprise, but I'm especially pleased to say that in the last Congress, she was an original co-sponsor and voted for which bill? See, they know this really well. So it is a real pleasure and honor to present a champion of workers' rights, a proven friend of our union, our Secretary of State, Secretary of Labor, Hilda Solis.
Wow. Thank you so much. Wow, Larry. Thank you, President Cohen, for the lovely introduction. And thank all of my friends from CWA. You guys have been with me from the very inception of my political career, which began many, many years ago. I won't even tell you how long ago. But you were there. You were there with me when I began my political career. I want to thank my friends from California that are here. My escort, my group here representing wonderful leadership, a good friend here in front of me, T. Santora, who I've known for many years, and so many of you that have been longtime friends. I just want to tell you how important it is for you to be here. And I want to thank your leadership for all of you and your commitment to working families and for being the champions of social justice for all working families. Thank you so much for that. I want to acknowledge Jeff Rickenbach for his 36 years of service to CWA, for his leadership. And I also want to thank your CWA Executive Vice President, Annie Hall. And I love the strong commitment that you all have for strong women leaders. And I also want to recognize a good friend, Barbara Easterling here, who is here. And I know that Annie Hall is a new addition, will be a tremendous Annie Hill. I'm sorry, Annie Hall. Annie Hill will be a tremendous asset to all of us. But I want to thank both of you. And Barbara, she and I were at a prayer breakfast not too long ago, Faith in Politics, and we go back a long ways in terms of what our commitment is for working class people and for social justice. But President Cohen just told you a little bit about my story and background. And some of you have heard it before, that I come from a working class family, and I'm very proud of that. Because in a town like this, you don't often hear those stories repeated or talked about. Many times those stories are left back home, back in our communities, and the struggles remain there. And sometimes those stories, I think, are so important to talk about. And that is what has led me to where I am today, to be able to be serving as the Secretary of Labor and be nominated by the first African American president in the United States, Barack Obama. You know, I didn't quite always understand growing up how important my mother and father were in terms of our own family, personal history, and the labor movement. But I remember and recall very fondly how my father would come home after work, sometimes after working the graveyard shift, and talking about meetings that he had during the day that he would take on to help organize workers in this battery recycling plant that he worked at for about 25 years. And if you know anything about battery recycling, they're some of the most dangerous factories and assembly plants that you can work at. And you're lucky if you can walk away at a later age and still have your health. Because my father was exposed to lead poisoning and to various other toxic chemicals. But it was through his work and work with the union, and I'm just talking generally about unions, how important that union was and what they brought to the employees there. Safety and protection in the workplace, even the notion that they needed to wear protective gear, equipment, and appropriate uniforms that they would not have to take home and wash with their other children's clothing, because that would expose the family to other toxins. But those safety precautions meant so much for us as children growing up. And I grew up in a large family, 7 of us. And Mom and Dad always worked really hard. My mom had to go to work after raising her children. And it wasn't an easy task. She made a lot of sacrifices. But both of them had always said, you know, we're lucky that we have the union behind us because you all have health care, meaning their children, meaning that we didn't have to worry about if we got sick or someone had an ailment or something, that we could always have access to our health care provider. And in the end, now that my mother and father are retired and well into their 80s, thank God, 85, my father just turned 85, is still alive and living on his union pension. He's living on his union pension. And thank God for that and all the hard work that came about with his struggles there, helping to improve the lives of working people. So when he'd come home and talk about how important the union was, I understood that. And as I began my political career and saw who my friends were each and every time that I went out to help other people organize or get involved in their campaigns, the unions were always there. And CWA, to be sure, was always a friend. So I want you to understand how important that is for me and who I am today. Because you've been through all those struggles when people told me that I couldn't do things. Even in the State House in California, when we worked on raising the minimum wage, people told me, it's not going to happen, Hilda. Some of our own Democratic friends said that. But what we did was, even though we had an obstinate governor at the time, we ran around him and we put an initiative on the ballot. And we had the help and support of CWA and many friends in labor. And we got a statewide initiative passed on the minimum wage. And it took a lot of work. And labor was there at the table. And resoundingly, about 63% of the voters said, you know what, it's time to raise the minimum wage. So it's a no-brainer. These things need to happen. And just recently here in Washington, you know, a few years ago, we passed the minimum wage here. It took almost 10 years to get that change. And that's what it almost takes right now to continue the movement, to make sure that we have worker protections and safety out there in the workplace, and that we take care of those people that are working at minimum wage, because that's still not enough. It's still at the poverty line. So we have to continually remember that. Now at the Department of Labor, I'm happy to tell you that at least in my department, through the recovery program, we've already issued $45 billion of the $46 billion that accounts for the Recovery Act dollars. Believe it or not, it's a significant amount of money that's going out to the workers. And we've allocated in the Department of Labor $3.9 billion for workforce investment programs. And that includes $1.25 billion for dislocated workers. You say, what is a dislocated worker? It's a worker who just lost their job. Their plant closed, they got terminated, or they got pink slipped. $400 million went for state unemployment, and $114 million, I was happy to announce just 2 weeks ago, went for our youth build programs. These are for our young, at-risk youth that need a second chance. Maybe didn't make it through high school, dropped out, had a tough time, but now they're coming back, learning skills. Some are getting into construction, some are getting into health and IT careers. And it's a wonderful program that I know the President strongly supports, and I know many of you will want people in your communities to sign up and be a part of. We've also, in the Department of Labor, extended unemployment insurance, the eligibility, so that many, many more workers can take part of that, or dislocated workers. We've increased the size of the unemployment checks by $25 a week. You may say that's not a lot, but you know what? After 4 weeks, that's $100. $100 to help pay for that electricity bill, or maybe pay for that extra school supply for your kids. Whatever it is, it's there. And it wasn't there before this president came into office. We're encouraged also by a lot of our states that have changed and reformed what we call their modernization of the Unemployment Insurance Act, and it allows for part-time workers now to draw down on this money, and especially for working women who haven't been able to stay at the job for 40 hours because their employer didn't allow them to. It allows them now to draw down some of that money. Or for women who are domestic violence victims, or if you had a spouse who maybe came back from the war and is moving around, they've got different locations that they're assigned to. So that also allows for an additional type of benefit for people that wouldn't normally have that. We've also expanded the COBRA benefits. So if you lost your job and you have no health care, the federal government will now pay 65% of that coverage if you're eligible for health care. You know, and that's just one part of the down payment on American workers. And I'll be honest with you, President Obama and I truly believe that government has a fundamental responsibility, and that responsibility is to protect all of our workers from unsafe workplaces and to protect workers from unjust labor practices. The workplace safety rules that have been so neglected over the last 8 years were put in place to protect people like my parents and like you. The wage and hour standards that labor fought for were there to make sure that people like men and women of CWA are paid a fair wage for their work. And under my watch, enforcement of our labor laws will be intensified to provide an effective deterrent to employers who put their workers' lives and their employment at risk. Let there be no mistake made. The Labor Department is back in the enforcement business. Thank goodness we have our dear President and a Democratic-controlled Senate and House. And I can tell you firsthand that the commitments that I'm seeing occur now are just fabulous. And you can see it in the Department of Labor's fiscal budget that's coming up for 2010 in our request. The budget will return our worker protection efforts to a level not seen since 2001. Everyone deserves a safe job. And in a single year, we're going to be adding over 670 additional investigators, inspectors, and other program staff. All of these resources will allow the Wage and Hour Division, the OSHA, the OFCCP to improve compliance in low-wage industries that employ vulnerable workers, increase its focus on reducing repeat violations, and use complaint investigations strategically to increase protections for the greatest number of workers. Providing American workers with safe workplaces are a primary responsibility of the department, and I believe in the promise of providing American families with good and safe jobs. And at the Department of Labor, we're focused on good jobs for everyone, and I know all of you share that thought. Larry, you would call it jobs for justice. We need more jobs. We need good jobs. And that means safe jobs, secure jobs, good benefits, and livable wages. And it means a voice on the job. And as Secretary of Labor, it's my charge to ensure that we're providing the training that will turn the 20th century blue-collar jobs into a secure 21st century green-collar job. And under the Recovery Act, we've allocated $750 million for worker training, $500 million which will go into green job creation. And as you know, green jobs will pay anywhere from 10 to 20% more in salaries. And green jobs can be labor jobs, and they can be jobs that women can also be involved in. And CWA, I know you know what green jobs are because you're already working at them right now. And these are jobs that will provide economic security for our middle-class families while reducing our nation's energy dependence. And these jobs, we can say, will stay here in the great United States of America. We're going to work hard to see that that happens, and I'm going to need your help. So remember, I'm going to be calling on you. The Department of Labor, as you know, is a few short blocks away from the CWA building. We truly are neighbors. And all of us who drive by the CWA building see the beautiful banner featuring one of your members, Chinazo Oklo. The headline on the banner reads, "Let's make this economy work for everyone." And I don't have to tell you because I see it in all the banners around the room here. Yeah. That's what the Employee Free Choice Act is all about, right? EFCA. I know that one of your top priorities this week while you're visiting congressional members is to talk about EFCA, the Employee Free Choice Act. And I want you to know that you have a friend when it comes to protecting collective bargaining rights and enforcing workplace safety and health laws and creating good-paying jobs for all Americans. And we do need the Employee Free Choice Act for all American workers. Workers like Sarah Stevens, one of your brave members. Sarah, is she here?
No, that's her picture, though.
Aha, okay. Well, she's with us.
Just had a child, right? Second daughter.
Okay. And Sarah, as you know, is a working mom. She's from my state, California. She stood up for herself and her co-workers at work and as a result lost her job. 1 year after she and her co-workers voted to form a union, they're still without a first contract. That's just not right. We all know that workers need a fair and efficient way to organize and bargain a first contract. And that's why it's so important that you're here today to help us lobby for the Employee Free Choice Act. This administration, our president and our vice president and I have clearly said that in order to rebuild the middle class, we need to level the playing field for working people. And we need to restore fairness in the workplace. And that's why we all support the Employee Free Choice Act. I was very happy as a member of the House of Representatives to be one of the few co-sponsors of the Employee Free Choice Act not too long ago. And now, as the Secretary of Labor, I'm looking forward to working with the White House to make the strongest case for why we need the Employee Free Choice Act. There's so many other issues that are taking up our time and discussion now on Capitol Hill. And I don't have to tell you how bad it is that we need health care reform and how important that issue is. Last Friday, House Democrats joined Senate Democrats in unveiling legislation on health care reform, and we applaud their efforts and determination. The President has said that he's committed to ensuring whatever plan we design to uphold three basic principles, and they are, first, the rising cost of health care has to be brought down. Second, Americans must have the freedom to keep whatever doctor and health care plan they have, or to choose a new doctor or health care plan if they want a new one. And third, all Americans must have quality and affordable health care. When it comes to the cost of health care, this much is clear. The status quo is unsustainable for families, businesses, and government. And getting health care costs under control is essential for reducing the budget deficits, restoring our fiscal discipline, and putting our economy on a path towards sustainable growth and shared prosperity. These costs are also hurting businesses, as some big businesses are at a competitive disadvantage with their foreign counterparts. I don't have to tell some of you that. And some small businesses are forced to cut benefits, drop coverage, and even lay off workers. By curbing waste, fraud, and abuse and preventing affordable hospital readmissions and taking a whole host of other cost-saving steps, you know what? We can save billions of dollars and delivering a better quality of health care for all American people. One of the things that I worked very strongly on in the past few years as a member of the House was improving the quality of health care, and that meant making sure that we had an adequate workforce available. And this year, the Department of Labor will be providing a competition for grant solicitation to provide for careers in health, allied, and in IT at the tune of $250 million. It's a good down payment to get people who want to get into health careers because we have a shortage, because so many physicians and others don't always stay in our communities and aren't there to help provide us with the prevention tools that we need. So hopefully we can work in partnership with some of the other federal agencies, HHS, Department of Labor, and Department of Education, to make it easier for people to get into these careers. And for those people that need to change their careers, that there'll be a career ladder for them. That's what's really important about what we're doing here to invest in our working class people. We're doing everything we can right now to help create jobs and to get our economy moving. And just yesterday, I was out in Los Angeles in a poor neighborhood in East LA where we were doing community service. And yesterday was a call out, a shout out that the president had on serve.gov, meaning he wants people to come out. Both Michelle and he are asking folks to give of their time. And I know you know how to do that because you get involved in all kinds of good things. But I'm asking you to consider that too. When you go out today or tomorrow and talk to folks on the Hill about what our concerns are for legislative priorities, also remember the many people that you represent back home. And when you go back, get involved with them. Help them better understand our laws and what this administration is trying to do. Help be a mentor to a young person. Go visit a senior center facility. Go help someone that maybe hasn't been able to go out to buy their own groceries because they're immobile. Go do something to help improve and restore that trust and faith in our government and our society. That's what this president is about. It's not all about putting all these funding forward because of reckless spending that someone did 8 years ago. We're stuck with it, but it's not forever. And there is hope. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. And I know that our president is going to work very hard, as well as his cabinet members, to see that those returns are made and that they're real for you and for your families. And that's why I'm so proud to be here with you, CWA, but also to know that we have a strong president who cares very deep about working class people. Those are the values that I like. Those are the values that you represent. And those are the values that this administration is bringing to Washington, D.C. and throughout the country. Thank you so much for having me.